Hello, sir. How are you?
Good to speak to you today, Steve.
Good to speak to you as always. All right, let's start with what George Will was referring to, that article of impeachment, abuse of the IRS. We know about Nixon's enemy list back then. We now know, and this information is forthcoming, it's been pouring out since Friday, when Friday we were told that groups that had Patriot in their name or Tea Party in their name applying for tax-exempt status were given exceptional scrutiny and hassled by the IRS. And we were told that it was just a few low-level people in Cincinnati office that had to do with that. Now we understand it started in March of 2010. The groups involved are not only Tea Party and Patriot groups, but groups opposed to the government, groups that want to teach the Constitution, Jewish groups, pro-Israel groups. And now it goes up the chain in the IRS, and then we just learned that someone in the White House also knew about this. So where's this going to end, Jason?
That's what we have to see. I mean, look, this is a clear violation of the Constitution. This is a clear violation of powers. And if this turns out to end up, if the buck actually stops at Barack Obama's desk, then he should be up for some serious scrutiny. I mean, I think this is something that legitimately we should be investigating. I don't think there should be any partisanship to this. It is nice that the president said, hey, this is intolerable, but we'll have to see. I mean, if this ends up on his desk, like it ended up on Nixon's desk, that is a serious charge. And the other question I have is, were any of these groups actually denied, and what were some of the consequences for them? That's something else I'd like to know.
Well, at the very least, we had an attorney on for about 15 of the groups just a little while ago, and at the very least, through the accusations, they were sent form after form after form and asked all kinds of questions that were out of the main and out of the norm that other groups were not being asked. But and again, it's a big if, and I have no way of knowing how far up it went. But you say serious considerations. Let's play games, because we are playing hypothetical. If Barack Obama knew about this, is that impeachment like it was for Nixon?
Believe it or not, I think in the current America, no. I think our expectations are so low for our president. I don't think there'd be enough political will to get that done. I think unfortunately, we don't hold our presidents to the same standards that we used to. When Nixon did what he did, America still had an almost sort of Pollyannish belief that our elected officials were honest and true and tried to follow the Constitution. So any major violation of the law, we were willing to impeach. I don't think that political will is there today. So even if it turned out that Barack Obama, if there are IRS tapes of Obama saying go after the Tea Party, I don't think that would get him impeached.
Really? So Republicans naturally would impeach him in the House. So you think Democrats in the Senate would do the same thing they did to Bill Clinton? Now with Bill Clinton, we were told it's his sex life, it's nobody's business. Of course, Mark Sanford's bit was everybody's business. But nonetheless, it was obstruction of justice. It was suborning perjury. It was all these charges, lying, et cetera, under oath to a federal grand jury. And the spin was it's his own personal life. Nobody cares. Yet he was impeached but not convicted. But if the president of the United States abused the IRS against citizens, you don't think that the public would want him impeached?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if you really think about it, the most important thing to everyone in the United States right now is getting this economy back on track. And unless this was something that people immediately saw, and I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong, Steve, I'm just saying that I think a lot of people out there here in flyover country and all over the world, all over the United States would say, you know what, that's bad and it's terrible, but does this get me back to work? Does this open up my factory? I don't think the American public wants that kind of expenditure of time in Congress anymore. Even if it was a clear violation of law, I just don't think it'll happen.
Well, you know, it's funny. It's funny you say that. And look, I respect your opinion. That's your opinion. I think you're dead wrong. And back in the Clinton days when I was doing this, and I said to people who would say, oh, it's, perjury, everybody lies. But I said, so what? I said, okay, what if he went into a 7-Eleven and robbed it? Would that be an impeachable offense? I said, why don't we come up with a list of crimes that a president could commit and we won't bother with him? We'll just say, it's okay, because we're more concerned about our livelihood or the economy or the well-being of the country. So if violation of the IRS is one of them, what? Give me some other laws the president could break that you think people would say that.
My guess is also this, and this has to do whether you're talking about Reagan and Iran-Contra, you're talking about Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, or you're talking about the Gulf War with George Bush, or this, or Fast or Furious, or anything else with Barack Obama. The most important thing to the American people is we get angry when the consequences are something that seem to affect everyone's daily life. Everybody couldn't find a way to say Bill Clinton's adultery, how did it affect me? And Americans say, if it hasn't affected me, I don't see why my government is complaining.
All right, but
about
let me ask you your opinion. Let me ask you your opinion. Forget let's say the public be damned for a second, and let's you and I talk.
Okay.
And by the way, we're talking to Dr. Jason Johnson, senior politics editor for Politic365.com here on the Steve Malzberg Show. All right, so let's say the president, did go on the IRS. Would you like to see him impeached?
No, and you know why? Because there's a long line of presidents that I would like to see brought up on a whole lot of charges.
Really? Who else broke the law?
I have some real concerns as to now he's passed away, so you can't do anything to Ronald Reagan. But I have some real concerns about Iran-Contra.
That was all adjudicated, and you brought up Katrina in the same breath as Monica Lewinsky. By the way, it was much more than Monica Lewinsky. It was lying to a federal grand jury and everything else I mentioned. But that's what the case is known as, so I'll give you that. But it was that. What was Katrina? What was criminal about Katrina?
I'm sorry, I don't think I actually said Katrina.
I'm sorry, I thought you did. George Bush and Katrina.
No.
Well, George Bush and what then?
George Bush and the Gulf War. Now, there's questions. Look, some people believe that the administration was operating off the best intelligence they could, and they were simply mistaken. We didn't find weapons of mass destruction.
But what was illegal about it?
There are people who argue, and there were testimony. People argue that they made it up. That they doctored the data.
Well, that's ridiculous. Okay, all right, but I'm not going to sit here and argue about the contents of the Gulf War. I'm just amazed that you. And let me ask you this: so if George Bush had been found guilty, or if George Bush was in office and this IRS scandal broke and it was liberal groups and the buck stopped at George Bush and he knew about it, you would say, you know what? I don't want to see him impeached because there's so many other presidents that have done things. That's what you would say, honestly?
To be perfectly honest, if we had a system of actually punishing presidents for the crimes that they committed on a regular basis, I will be in favor of it. But we don't in this country. We don't look, Bill Clinton committed acts of sexual harassment that would put anybody else in jail or out of a job.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And George Bush was either grossly negligent about the Gulf War or he lied. But either way, we don't have a way of knowing. We don't have a way of really bringing these people to task for the crimes or mistakes or the incompetence or the occasional corruption that they engage in.
Well, wait a minute. Well, we do. It's called impeachment. But let me concede, even though I disagree. Let's say Bush lied. He made it up. And let's say, and we know Clinton was impeached but not convicted. So why would you give Obama a pass on something this serious?
Well, like I said, we have to find out if he's guilty.
No. The whole premise, Jason, the whole premise of our argument is we know the buck stopped with him, so we're going from there.
Yeah, if we find out that he's guilty, again, I wouldn't care because my primary concern would be this, and this is where this becomes important. If we found out in the course of an investigation, again, we're presuming, let's say Obama's guilty. If we find out that Tea Party groups were shut down, if we found out that pro-Israel groups were shut down, if we found out that organizations were put out of business because the IRS was acting as the personal arm of Barack Obama to shut down any sort of political opposition, okay, then I can believe in censure, then I can believe in all sorts of other consequences. But we have to see that it goes that far.
Well, but that's our premise. You just said that's our premise.
Like I said, our premise is if it stops with Barack Obama, but we don't know if it was effective yet. We don't know if he stopped any organizations. That's the real issue.
No. Wait, it wouldn't matter. I mean, if he knew that they were being hassled, if he knew that the IRS was being used against certain political groups or certain groups against the law, and he knew, why would it matter whether or not a group was closed down? I mean, if he knew that his IRS was being used in violation of the law, that's our premise, you still say, who cares?
Yeah, I say,
wow.
Seriously, on the scale of crimes that presidents commit on a regular basis, honestly, that's not one I'd be overly concerned with. But I would really want to see what kind of organizations are taken down. And like I said, hey, I wasn't around. I wasn't around with Nixon, Steve. I'm one of those cynical Gen Xers, I guess, because my expectations of the President of the United States are so much lower than probably the golden age of the United States. This is something that I think is a problem. It is a serious problem, but whether or not it's worth impeachment, whether or not it's worth removing somebody from office, I don't necessarily think so, even if at our premise, our hypothetical premise, that it ended up on Barack Obama's desk.
I am flabbergasted and amazed, and I don't know what to say. What about I'm almost afraid to say, what about Benghazi? What if the president, what if he knew the talking points were lies? What if he misrepresented it to the public? What if Hillary has been lying and the president knows it and they concocted this story? I could play you right now. I could play you right now. The president did not call it a terrorist attack in the Rose Garden the next day. He lied about that again today at the press conference. He said he did. The riots in Cairo were not because of the video. He lied about that again today and said they were. Hillary and Obama went on Pakistani television, spent our money to run the ads, apologizing for the video. He went to the United Nations a week later, after that Susan Rice stuff, and apologized for the video.
It's entirely different. Benghazi is entirely different because, to me, it goes to the same thing I was saying about the Gulf War. Whether or not it was just a mistake in intelligence, or whether or not the Bush administration lied. When it comes to Benghazi, there's two questions that you have to ask yourself as an American citizen. Either this is gross incompetence on the part of the Obama administration and Hillary and Clinton in particular, and they were trying to cover up for a mistake, and then they went and had hearings, or they blatantly don't care about U.S. employees abroad and didn't care if people died. I don't think they don't care. I don't think that Obama and Hillary Clinton hate the military.
All right, so you're saying they're covering up? That was your other choice.
I think it was gross incompetence. I think they tried to cover it up right afterwards, and then they ended up going into a hearing. And as far as I'm concerned, in all honesty, when it comes to the hearing, I really think, Barack Obama jumped in front of the bullet for Hillary Clinton for whatever his sort of political motivations are. But honestly, I think that one falls in the lap of Hillary Clinton. I didn't believe for 1 second in that testimony. I actually found it offensive as an American citizen when she raised her hands and said, "Who cares?" Of course people care.
No, she actually said, what difference does it make?
Yeah. I thought that was problematic. People die. But ultimately, I think that actually falls on her lap. I don't really see that as being as connected to Barack Obama. He was not Secretary of State. So I see Benghazi as being, in the same way that I think that Wolfowitz and Rumsfeld were responsible, or maybe Cheney were responsible for certain things that Bush wasn't necessarily responsible for.
I don't even want to go there. How about Gosnell? Death penalty?
I think so. I'm in favor of the death penalty. So,
You're what? You're what?
I'm in favor of the death penalty.
Good. Glad to hear it. How about you think now the media will give this case more time now that, it's finished, but in retrospect, you think they'll give the verdict more time, the sentencing more time than they gave the whole trial?
Yeah, probably, because now we're done with Jodi Arias. The thing is, Gosnell was not as sexy. It didn't feature a pretty woman. It didn't feature all sorts of bizarre sexual behavior.
It featured dead babies.
Yeah.
And a dead woman.
It should have received much more coverage. I'm in complete agreement with me on that. It should have received a lot more coverage, but it was covered over by the bombings. It was covered over by Jodi Arias. And again, I do favor the death penalty under certain circumstances. But again, you and I both know we cannot control where the weather vane of news goes. Some issues are determined to be exciting by somebody in positions of control, and that's not always
Well,
us.
you could control it on your end, and I could control it on my end, but that's about all we could do. Hey, Doc, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anytime.
Take care. That's Dr. Jason Johnson, Senior Politics Editor for Politic365.com.